Hello, all. This is Carly Brookfield, Chief Executive at Driving Instructors Association. Just doing a quick member update for the week for you all because there's a lot of stuff that's been going on this week and the week before, especially with all the measures that were announced by the Minister a week and a half ago now to tackle test waiting times. And those are still reverberating around the industry in terms of just the impact from the announcement alone, never mind thinking about the longer term impact of these measures as well, which quite frankly, we're not sure that DFT has actually thought through for themselves. So just starting with the easy stuff to update you on, the quick stuff, there's been an announcement from DVSA this week, which is actually a positive one and one that we wholly support. They've done a trial in the last 6 months or so at 20 test centres where they have introduced a much bigger element of independent driving on the higher speed roads. So not just motorways and dual carriageways, but the more risky rural high speed roads as well. As I said, DIA is fully supportive of this move. It's now been implemented because the trial was successful. And so most tests now that will go out where possible, where it's accessible to a high speed road, there will be an element of high speed road driving just to ensure the examiner has a good opportunity to evaluate the risk management skills of the driver for when they're driving independently on high speed roads. Now, luckily, we've got something for that to help develop your pupils. You may remember back in 2017, when motorways were deregulated for instructors to take their pupils on the road with them, we created, working on behalf of National Highways, Highways England at the time, a resource called Driving Hub. Drivinghub.co.uk still exists. We are wholly running it now at DIA, and we've just updated it with these measures to increase the amount of driving on high speed roads in the test. So whilst we're working to increase a little bit more of the rural roads content on there, because it's quite motorway and dual carriageway heavy at the moment, there are very useful resources that you can use as a trainer. You can direct parents and pupils to it as well. And in the trainer section, there's things like lesson plans and guides to help do sessions on those high speed roads. But there's lots of useful videos for pupils themselves to take account of. And the kind of advice in those goes across all types of high speed roads. So check out drivinghub.co.uk. That's a free resource for people who are looking to drive on high speed roads, and the trainers who will be hopefully developing them to be better drivers on those as well. We're looking forward to our conference that's coming up very shortly in December at Coventry Arena. Very pleased to say now that we have sold out completely on our original allocation of tickets. Some tickets may become available for the day, before the day. We do get cancellations sometimes. So if you email help@driving.org, I'm sure they will put you on the waiting list if you're anxious to get a ticket. I know it's a big commitment time-wise, unlike expos where you might be there for a couple of hours and they've got very mini CPD sessions. This is a full day of CPD, and it's quite intensive for people. But those who want to commit to some professional development and take their mind and themselves off the road and focus on that development for the day, it's a really good day to do that. And this year, we are looking very much at that. It's taking your mind off the road and helping you understand the mind of all the drivers that you teach, from the fleet driver to the novice driver to the older driver to the neurodiverse driver. So it's a real insight into the mind of the motorist. So we're very much looking forward to seeing people there. And as I said, if you haven't got your ticket yet, don't despair. There may be some available as a late allocation. So keep in touch with us and we'll make sure you can get hold of yours as well. So just now going back to the very hot topic that is always a hot topic of test waiting times. You will be aware that we have launched a number of kind of messaging and communications out to the media and to you guys and also to the ministers in our response to the issue of the measures that Heidi Alexander announced on test waiting times or tackling test waiting times a week and a half ago now. The first thing that happened in that communications chain was that we expressed our disappointment and concern that those measures had been made with no consultation on the consultation results and the measures to be announced by the ministers with their close stakeholders. DIA is a first tier consultative stakeholder. We are one of the organisations that the DVSA meet with most frequently to develop policy and strategy and the communication thereof. And on this occasion, quite frankly, they haven't taken that step. They haven't communicated this, first of all, to close stakeholders for us to have our inputs on the decisions that they are making, nor on the communications of that. So we were in the same place as you guys were finding out about these measures. We've obviously launched several challenges to these measures. because they don't look like they're very thought through from the perspective of the impacts. And one of the things that I've called for is more clarity on what impact assessments were done, either proceeding for this consultation, which is a requirement in any public consultations, or what should have been what they call an output assessment, i.e., once you've done your consultation, you've got your results, you run another impact assessment to understand if you make these decisions, what is going to be the impact on people as a result of that. And the things that they needed to look at, which I'm not convinced that they have, is impacts such as, and it's in the questions that you've asked us to cascade up to DVSA and DFT, had they thought about the needs of neurodiverse and anxious and vulnerable pupils? If you're going to close down, one of the key measures, you're going to close down the OBS to driving instructors who regularly book tests for their more anxious and vulnerable pupils. How are we going to resolve that? Because there's a lot of people who actually don't want to book their tests themselves, and they are probably people who are unlikely to have responded to that consultation either. So where was their voice in the decision making that took place? I've not been given a particularly satisfactory answer to that consideration in the meetings that I've had thus far with DVSA. And to be fair to them, they're frankly playing catch up on this issue as well. The minister was known to be going off to make some decisions and announced us at a transport committee that morning, but I'm not sure that even they thought that it was going to be something that first tier stakeholders didn't even have a chance to examine with them beforehand. There doesn't seem to be much thought about the impact on intensive driving schools. Now, it's not everybody's favourite model of learning to drive, either for instructors or for pupils, but it does have a place in our market. And some pupils thrive on an intensive driving course and have a need to get through very quickly. Intensive driving schools have been very much affected by the test waiting times issue, and now they're going to be more so. Not being able to book the tests with the lessons and being able to schedule all of that together for a very short time period will frankly drive some intensive driving schools to the wall, and some have already written to us with that concern. So I'm not sure that concern has been dwelled upon very much in this decision making. Clearly, instructors are worried overall about having no access other than to display their time and availability and do a handful of swaps in the system. It does seem to me ludicrous that you would bar the very people that you require to go through a training and regulatory and licensing process to become the professional driver educator in the United Kingdom of new drivers, and then you don't let those professionals play a bigger part in helping to ensure only the right people at the right time are going through to driving test and to licensure to become an independent driver. So in one far move, we have limited the ability of the most key professional to determine who should go through to driving test to actually have that influence on that. Now, of course, you can have your influence on your pupil to some degree, but the pupil taking complete control now of the booking process and the ADI having nothing in there but their times and availabilities is going to create a wider problem with not allowing the ADI to play that role of being a better gatekeeper with their pupils and booking their tests for them. We question whether there should have been a much more radical question in that consultation, and a third option, which is, should the OBS be closed out to everybody but actual ADIs, and should it be ADIs that book driving tests in the United Kingdom for their pupils? Radical because it's stopping consumers just choosing when they would like to go for a test, whether they're ready or not. But if we're serious about road safety and serious about only letting those through to test who are test ready and license ready, maybe that's a solution that we should have examined in that consultation. So it's a very problematic set of measures that have been announced. The swaps issue has not gone down well at all. It's losing flexibility for not just intensive driving schools, but lots of instructors who like to swap their pupils around to make sure that even though a pupil might have booked a test much earlier, if they're not test ready, they can bring in and use it for a pupil that is test ready. So then again, that speaks of somebody who doesn't have the experience of managing a group of pupils, making those kind of decisions for those pupils. There's been a lot of concern from you about obviously the overall issue, but also the doing swaps. How will that be done practically in the future? Will you still be able to phone up and do swaps? Practical questions like that. And the fact that we haven't got the answers to these questions shows you how rushed this set of measures was, because every big major change announcement I've ever done in my career in communications, knowing that it's going to cause more than a kerfuffle, it's going to cause a furore, particularly of this nature, You normally sit there and you work out what are the most frequently asked questions going to be and get your answers ready before you send out the consultation. This has very much caught everybody on the back foot. We sent in a set of FAQs, your questions that you gave to us, plus the questions that we'd already thought of in response to these measures over a week and a half ago now. And we were promised it on the Friday following the Wednesday those measures were announced. We're now at the following Friday. We haven't got those questions answered. And even the baseline questions, there should have been more pressure to get those to us and those things answered as soon as possible. We know it's sensitive, but you should have put some effort into getting those back to a rather angry industry who's been much affected by these announcements. So we're putting pressure on to get these FAQs back. Please keep sending us your questions. We'll add those to the set of FAQs as we pressure them for the answer to the first set as well. It's been really, really good to hear your experiences of how you feel, the limiting of the fact that we haven't got enough testing systems already had an impact on driving instructors and their pupils, and how you feel these measures are going to have an even further impact. We are running a survey at the moment. We would like you to still continue responding to that, but having had a quick look at the results today, I can see that overwhelmingly ADIs have very little confidence in this latest set of measures to resolve the issues with test waiting times. And they are very cynical about the measures as well. They are feeling very, very cynical about the communications of these measures and the communications overall throughout the test waiting times crisis. And confidence, we took a question that measured confidence in the agency's ability to tackle the issues of test waiting times is very poor as well. So please input your responses to that survey as well. So that's really all I've got to tell you about today. I've told you about the conference. I've told you about the driving test and the driving responses that we're looking for now. One of the biggest challenges we are looking to, kind of press ministers on, if they will deign to come down and have a meeting with the industry that these measures impact the most, is proportionality of responses to that consultation. You were never going to get a proportionate response from the experts because balanced with the consumer view, because there's 42,000 instructors in the UK at the moment or thereabouts. And we were never going to get every single one of those respond to this consultation, even though you should have all responded to such an important consultation. And we need to look at that in the future, that it's really important that we do respond. However, even if every single ADI in the UK had responded, they still would have been outweighed in their responses by the general public. And there is an argument to say these 42,000 over here are the experts. They are the ones who will tell you and know how these decisions will hit on the ground and whether they've really got the impact to actually have an impact. This lot over here are just responding, the public are just, and stakeholders such as road safety charities and others that are not working at the coalface of driver education every day, don't use the booking system, but will have an opinion anyway, as we know. These people over here are arguably the inexpert and uneducated and ill-experienced and ill-equipped in many ways to think through the impacts of their responses. So they might know what they want, which is what do we want tests now, and how do we think we're going to get it by controlling everything ourselves. But they don't know the far-reaching consequences of that and the downward pressure that creates on driving instructors to get people test ready for a slot that they've just got and plucked from the air because they think they're ready as a novice to the whole process, and all the other problems that comes with that as well. So, we are really pushing for answers on how deeply did they think from the get-go about how they were going to weigh up the balance of the experts, who are much smaller in number, and the general public, and what they want rather than what they actually need. And we won't stop asking that question. We asked it at the outset, by the way, so it should have been something that was designed in to this consultation. So I'm still waiting for a satisfactory answer on that as well. So that's all I've got for you today, folks. Hopefully you are doing well, regardless of all the turmoil that's in the air in our industry at the moment. You keep telling me what you think of the latest measures to tackle test waiting times. I know many of you have said are cynical. I mean, new military driving instructors driving examiners being drafted in, only netting us 6,000 extra tests a year. That it's kind of almost says it all in terms of people being cynical about the measures. Too little, too late every time. And if military examiners could be deployed in this manner, why weren't they deployed before when the backlog could have been tackled in a much expedient way and not have reached the proportions that it has now. Anyway, I digress back to the test waiting issue. So hope that I can come back to you with more flesh on the bones of better communications next week and more answers. But as I said, keep feeding back to our survey and keep feeding back your thoughts on these latest measures. And we'll try and keep in touch with you as soon as we hear any updates on those. Thanks, folks, and have a good weekend wherever you are.